Hello. Am I audible?
Yes. Yes, sir.
मैडम मैं माइक चालू कर रहा हूँ. Hello.
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Good morning, sir, and welcome
Good.
to this session on impact. This is the impact lecture series, and sponsored by Ministry of Education's Innovation Cell. We have established institutions innovation cell with MOEs IC in 2019, and we do conduct a lot of activities under entrepreneurship cell at IMDR. We have entrepreneurship and innovation committee also at IMDR. But there is an IIC which is formed along with the Ministry of Education IC. And this year we got sponsorship for Impact Lecture Series from Ministry of Education's Innovation Cell. We got this privilege because we are connected with them since last 3 years. And in this series, we are inviting eminent speakers from the industry to impart knowledge regarding entrepreneurship, innovation, and startup. So in this series, I welcome you, sir, and I would like to introduce to you to the audience. Right? So, friends, we are with us Mr. Pranav Khanwalkar, and I would like to read out his brief profile. He is an alumnus of Abhinav Vidyalaya English Medium School and pass out 10th standard in 2005. He is an alumnus of Brihan Maharashtra College of Commerce BMCC. He secured second rank in BMCC in 12th examination. He graduated from Pune University in 2010 with distinctions scoring 82% marks. And he is a chartered accountant. During CA articleship, he worked as a part of statutory and internal audit teams of large listed companies. He also handled the BSc and NSC listing process of a large corporation in Pune. He qualified as a chartered accountant in 2011, passing all three examinations in the first attempt. He started his own venture and founded the firm Khanwalkar Karve and Associate in 2012, where he currently is working as a partner. During his 10 years of practice, he has handled different tasks like statutory audit, internal audit, direct tax compliance, corporate law reporting, debt syndication, and merger and acquisition advisory and support. He has been working closely with startup entities from the early days of his practice and has consulted them on various issues such as selection of type of entity, obtaining registrations, compliance management, setup of various financial processes, and financial reporting. Currently, he is helping IMDR also in setting processes for IMDR's Alumni Association IMDRA. So he's closely associated with IMDR and Deccan Education Society. He briefly taught accountancy to company secretary executive students and has also been a faculty at various seminars, webinars. He is avid watercolor painter and scale modeler in his free time. Modeler means who makes objects from substances like wood and clay. And he is an enthusiastic person. I met him once in our director madam's cabin. I welcome you, sir, with this brief introduction. You are associated with us and you are also a part of Deccan Education Society and you completed your graduation from BMCC.
Yes, sir.
I welcome you and request you to take the session ahead.
Thank you,
And
sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, I'll start the session. So basically, I have a small PowerPoint presentation. The screen I'll share so that we can just start with the discussion.
yes, sir.
Yes. Hi. So let me start with saying that how happy I am to address students from an organization where I was once a student. During my 10 years of practice, I have worked closely with startups, seeing many succeed and also, some going down the bad path. So I just thought that we will have a brief discussion on what a startup is. So I'll just run you through quickly what we plan on covering in today's session. So first we'll be covering what a startup is. Secondly, as young entrepreneurs, how would you select the type of entity for your startup? Next, we will have a brief discussion on what all registrations you need to obtain for a startup. The next part is after you've obtained the registrations, there are compliances which any corporate or non-corporate entity needs to undertake during the course of its business. So we will be speaking about what all compliances are applicable for a entity and how do you manage that. And the last part we will be covering is how to be proactive in your compliance management and what all options are available to you in the market today. So I'll just move on to the next slide. So what is a startup? That is the first question. Now, if you see the common parlance meaning of a startup is a company or an entity which is based on a business idea and the entrepreneur himself or herself starts investing and develops that idea into a scalable business model. So there are no in the common parlance there are no restrictions as to what activities a startup can do or how it must be set up, where it must be registered. The common parlance meaning is quite simple. You have an idea and you want to turn it into a scalable business model, you have a startup. Now in India in 2015, our honorable Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi started a scheme of Startup India. So basically, if you had a new business idea and you wanted to turn that into a business model, basically to promote entrepreneurship, you could get yourself registered under the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion, the DIPP. And once you got registered under the DIPP, you would start getting certain benefits in terms of your financing options, your direct tax compliances, etc., etc. So this whole scheme was started in India to promote entrepreneurship. Now, one of the most important things that we need to understand is that if you're a startup, then you will also get certain income tax benefits. So you will get a lower rate of tax, then you will get a tax holiday for the first few years. So there are basically many benefits if you want to have a startup of your own. Now, what happens is that once you start the startup, there are a number of questions, or rather when you plan to start a startup, there are a number of questions. So I think the first question that any entrepreneur will have is what kind of entity should I select for my startup entity? So I've tried to list out a few general types which are there. Now, each of these types carries its own pros and cons. So I'll just run through each type of entity. So the first one is a proprietorship concern. So as the name suggests, a proprietorship concern is a one-man show. So it is the proprietor himself who has started the entity, and it is his PAN which gets registered all over all the various registration authorities, and there is no differentiation between the business and the businessman. Now, the pros and cons for a proprietorship concern are it's very flexible because it's a single person entity. There are no questions of having a problems with decision making. You take a decision, you implement the decision. The cons of having a proprietorship concern are the liabilities are unlimited. So if God forbid there are some problems with the startup and you know you can't pay back its debts, they can come to your home and take your personal assets for a proprietorship concern. Going to a partnership firm. So basically a partnership firm it's quite similar to a proprietary, except that there are more than two entrepreneurs who come together. Now partnership firms, in terms of the liability, they do have unlimited liability, but it's still better to have two people instead of one. Even a partnership firm offers quite a significant amount of flexibility. In terms of income tax compliance, one positive fact is that a partnership is still considered as a separate taxable entity. Now, the normal partnerships are unlimited liability. So in 2008, the government came up with the Limited Liability Partnership Act. So you get the same benefits as that of a normal partnership, except that your liabilities are limited. So even if, God forbid, there is some problem and you have issues paying off your debt, no creditor can come to your home to, just take away your assets. Of course, this is not applicable for fraudulent transactions. I don't think we should dwell on that much right now. So these first three concerns are basically the old kinds of, what shall we say, old kinds of traditional entity types. Now, in the first three, it's very difficult to get investment from a third party investor because the structures inherently are such that you simply can't give the kind of protection that you can give an investor under the private limited company. So that brings us to the last type of entity where you have a private limited company. Now private limited company over here in this discussion, I would include private limited companies, public limited companies, then one person companies, all these kinds of, basically they are limited liability corporates. Now for a private limited company, the first and foremost benefit that you get is that there is a separate legal entity which is formed, and which will function on its independent basis. So it will be taxable as a separate entity. You'll be able to draw remuneration, you'll be able to get investments. The flip side is a private limited company comes with a lot of compliances. We'll just go to that in the next few slides. So going to the next slide, as I've already covered these points. So how do you select the entity type for your startup? As I said, the nature of the business, this is one important point. If what you are incorporating or your startup entity is such that you would like to withdraw any and all profits after a particular point, then you'll have to factor that in also, where a partnership firm is much better than a private limited company. So basically there are many factors for your selection of type of entity. Number of promoters I have covered, plan of obtaining investment in startup from third parties I have covered. Now, income tax is also a critical aspect on this particular point, wherein as a private limited company, you're chargeable at 25%. If you're a partnership, you're chargeable at 30%. If you're a private limited company, then any dividends that are paid out are chargeable in the hands of the shareholders. So all of these points need to be considered when you're selecting the type of entity for your startup. Two more points which, in the positive scheme of things we might not discuss, but which are really important, are dispute redressal. So if you are in a partnership firm, you get into a dispute with one of the partners, your best option is go to the civil court and fight it out for the next 5 or 10 years. For a company, you've got the National Company Law Tribunal, you have got arbitration. So there are many aspects for dispute redressal which are better for a company. On the other hand, if you want to close your startup, it's easier to close a proprietorship, a partnership, or an LLP vis-a-vis private limited company. So again, I'll reiterate that basically what you need to understand is that the answer to each of these questions will ultimately help you select the type of entity that will be best suited to your startup. Okay. Uh, okay, I'll go to the next slide. Now, uh, you selected the type of entity that you wanted. Now you will have to see what are the basic registrations you need to take. So the PAN, all your balance registration on that. On the other hand, if you are a partnership, you need to get yourself registered with the registrar of firms. If you are an LLP or a private limited company, you need to get yourself registered with the Ministry for Corporate Affairs. Once this registration is done, now under the new scheme of the government, basically the government has prepared these forms as such where you will get maximum of these registrations at the time of incorporation only, such as your PAN, your TAN, your GST. All of these registrations the government will give you on day one. So basically the government also would like to protect you from any kind of what shall we say, you missing out on getting these registrations. So government also wants you to be compliant, so they'll help you get yourself registered. Apart from that, if you are in Maharashtra, you need to get yourself registered under the Shop Act, the Shop and Establishment Act. It's an online process. You just need to upload the basic documents and you'll get a Shop Act registration. Similarly, in Maharashtra, there is a Profession Tax Act wherein you need to pay 2,500 rupees every year and deduct any PT from your employees. So that registration you need to take. Apart from that, there are two more types of registration. One is your activity specific type of registration. Say, for example, if you are into import and export of goods or services or your assets, basically you need to get an import export code. This will help you do any and all custom compliances when there is any import or export. Similarly, there is a labor code which has come out. So we need to get ourselves registered on a central level under various labor laws. So basically this covers your provident fund, your maternity benefits. So there are a lot of labor laws which are there in India, wherein you need to maintain certain registers, certain returns, which will be checked and examined by the concerned officers. So once you get all of these basic registrations, then we need to understand what compliances need to be done under each of these registration types. So yeah, so now we have come to the compliance management under various laws. So as you might be aware, the first task at hand for any startup is maintenance of books of accounts. So basically any and all business transactions that you're undertaking, be it payment or opening of the bank account, payment of charges, infusion of capital, then payment of taxes, or you may be purchasing certain assets, everything. Bookkeeping is an absolutely essential function for any kind of entity. The end result is that if you are very regular and critical in recording of business transactions and maintenance of books of accounts, then any kind of inquiries or investment due diligences, you'll be able to stand firm against any kind of these things. So basically, maybe because I'm an accountant, this feels very critical to me. But is the first and
Sir,
foremost
excuse me.
compliance that needs to be
Sir,
done.
there is a problem with
And
bandwidth,
this
I think.
is applicable for any type of startup entity that you might select. Softwares. So you can maintain various
Hello.
books of accounts in various softwares. Hi.
Excuse me, sir.
Hello. Yes, sir.
Sir, can you switch off camera because there is some bandwidth issue, I think. So the voice is breaking.
I'm so sorry, sir. Just a minute.
Uh,
Just a minute, sir. I'll just. Yes, sir. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir. You are clear.
Yes, sir.
Video
Yes,
is
sir.
on, sir, still. Video is on.
To just
Because
share
later on
that.
it may create problem because there is some bandwidth issue.
Okay, okay. I'll just share this window. Is the PowerPoint presentation now online?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. So what I was saying is that bookkeeping and accountancy. Now you have various options available wherein you can use softwares which are there for maintaining your books of accounts. So there is a software called as Tally. There is a software called as QuickBooks. So there are a lot of many options which are there. If you are interested in getting an ERP, those options are also there. The next important thing is that for any and all business transactions you have recorded, supporting documentation is also very important, because then periodic reports given for MIS and statutory authorities such as the income tax, the company law, for everything you need to have proper books of accounts and supporting documentation. So moving on to the next applicable laws. Now, if you are a private limited company, you're governed by the Companies Act of 2013. Now, under the Companies Act, you're required to maintain certain annual, quarterly, monthly statutory records, such as register of members, shareholders, then register of charges, etc. Plus, you are required to conduct 4 board meetings and 1 annual general meeting, bare minimum, to be compliant under the Companies Act. Similarly, for a private limited corporate entity, annual audit of its financial statements for the period from April to March is mandatory, and that needs to be done from a practicing chartered accountant. And these financial statements and returns of shareholders, etc., these need to be filed on the MCA on an annual basis. Apart from that, there are also other forms such as deposit returns, MSME returns, which are also applicable. So under the Companies Act, uh, there are a fair bit of compliances. So I on an annual basis. Then, so if you have entered into certain specific kind of transactions, there is a report or a return in the form of the annual information return, which is a part of the government's data mining and data gathering initiative for widening of the tax base. So that annual information return needs to be filed. Apart from that, if your turnover, subject to other conditions, if your turnover exceeds 10 crores for a private limited company, then you are required to do audit under the Income Tax Act and file the necessary forms 3CA, 3CD with the income tax authorities on 30th on or before 30th of September. Apart from that, once you start filing returns, the tax audits, etc., then you'll probably keep getting love letters from the income tax asking for information, then asking how you have done a transaction in a particular way, and asking for more details. So response to these queries, notices, issue letters is also part of your annual income tax compliance. Apart from that, if you are a private limited company or a partnership firm or a limited liability partnership, you need to deduct and collect tax at source on various payments that you make to your employees, to your creditors. So for example, if you are making a payment in excess of 30,000 rupees to your accountant who is a consultant, you'll have to deduct 10% tax deposited with the government. Similarly, one side of the coin is you need to deduct tax and pay the amount to the government, and the other side of the coin is you need to report these transactions as to how much is the tax, under what pan it was deducted, and everything under you need to file TDS returns. So this TDS deduction and deposition is a monthly compliance, and filing of TDS returns is a quarterly compliance. Once you deduct and pay taxes to the government account and file a TDS return, you also need to give form 16 or 16A to the persons from whose payment you have deducted taxes. Going to the next one, indirect taxes. Since 2017, GST has been with us. It's recently completed 5 years on 1st of July. There is a lot of political controversy on whether GST is an easy tax or it is a difficult tax. Suffice to say that for us as entrepreneurs and management of startups, we need to file the necessary returns on a periodic basis. So any and all sales that you make during the particular month or the quarter, you need to file the GSTR1 return. Similarly, GSTR1 only entails filing of information based on the liability determined. The monthly GSTR 3B is also to be filed and the liability is to be paid. An annual return is also required to be filed, covering all 12 months of the returns that you have filed. Recently, there is a amendment that has come which exempts small entities from undertaking annual returns. Similarly, if you are an exporter and you don't want to pay any GST on the exports that you're doing of services or goods, then a letter of undertaking needs to be filed with the department wherein you will be able to escape from the liability and make yourself more competitive in the export market. Similarly, if you are into pure export, the GST law also gives you an option to claim refunds of any GST that you have paid to your suppliers and make your business more profitable and more competitive in terms of the P&L also, and in terms of better fund management also, because फिर आपका उतना पैसा working capital में अटकता नहीं है. Just like income tax, you'll probably get love letters from the GST department also. Now that has started, considering that we have completed 5 years. But so long as you are compliant, you don't need to worry. And basically no one wants to trouble small entities and startups considering the current business environment. Similarly, you in case you're doing imports and exports, you have to do also customs compliance, where on imports you'll have to pay customs duty. If you're re-exporting it, you can claim a refund or you can have customs bonded warehouse. So there are a number of compliances that are there under customs also. Now coming to the last list of compliances. So basically, as I mentioned before, you need to get yourself a Shop Act registration if you are a business, and that needs to be renewed every 3-5 years by paying the requisite fee. Similarly, profession tax registration, which you will obtain, you'll have to pay 2,500 rupees every year for the type of startup entity that you have, and plus if you have got employees, you'll have to deduct 2,500 from their annual salaries. ये सब करने के बाद आपको you'll have to file returns of whatever PT you have paid, whatever you have deducted and paid, etc. Now the last thing that is there is labor law compliances. So this is very critical in today's day and age, wherein once you exceed the certain number of employees specified in the respective act, say 10 or 20, you need to start maintaining some registers. You need to start maintaining you need to start filing certain returns, and you need to start undertaking those compliances. Now there is a new labor code which is coming. So they're trying to basically club almost 50 odd acts into a smaller number of acts wherein compliance becomes easier, and the license raj that is even there today under labor laws should stop. Whether that will happen, whether the government will be successful in doing that, or we'll still keep dealing with cranky labor law officers who are fairly, who aren't that straightforward, is something that we will have to see. But at least the government is taking steps in the right direction to make things easier and to reduce any and all corruption which is there under labor laws currently. Now, you will say कि sir, you are telling us too much about compliances. So ये compliances करते बैठेंगे तो धंधा कब करेंगे? When will we actually do the business for which we started the startup entity? See, I'll tell you, this is where most startups, they I won't say fail, but this is where they fumble, because unfortunately or fortunately, all of these laws are there in the public domain. And if say you forgot to do some kind of compliance and then you got a notice, ignorance is not bliss. So if you ask me, compliance management is absolutely essential. There are certain ways in which you can tackle compliance management, but simply turning your back on compliance is saying कि यार जब होगा तब देखेंगे is going to be not the right way to approach it. Now, basically, I'm trying to make you understand why compliances are important. See, you can be proactive in your compliance management or you can be reactive. If you're proactive, you've already decided and determined what liabilities are there. You've already understood how you're going to comply with those liabilities. You already have done the fund management for complying with the liabilities. You're already halfway there. When it comes to reactive, especially for a startup, I personally feel that funds are scarce. So ये compliance छूट गया तो इसकी penalty भरा, उसका interest भरा. That is a criminal waste of money. So if we can actually save on money by being proactive in our compliances, then money saved is money earned. So I personally feel, as maybe as a compliance professional, I might be feeling that proactive compliance management is always better. It's always more effective than a reactive compliance management. As I said, cost savings तो आपके होंगे ही, effort savings भी बहुत होंगे. रिटर्न नहीं भरा, फिर वो ऑफिसर आपको फोन करता है, ही इज रूड टू यू, दैट स्पॉइल्स योर डे. ये you cannot measure this in money, but in terms of your own mental peace, yes, definitely it is going to give you a lot of stress. And adding that to the stress you already have of running the business, it can unnecessarily create problems. Financial discipline, if you ask me, is really important when it comes to compliance management. So to give an example, we have a client who at the time of making any payments will always keep the TDS amounts aside in the bank accounts and pay it as soon as possible. So that way, in terms of your fund management, you have already set aside those funds. And then at the time of payment of TDS, you don't have to think कि अरे यार मैं TDS भरने के लिए अभी कैश क्रेडिट अकाउंट से लूँ, ओवरड्राफ्ट अकाउंट से लूँ, या फिर घर से पैसे लेके आऊँ और TDS भरूँ. So that you don't need to worry. So fund management is an essential base for compliance management. Similarly, as entrepreneurs, I don't need to tell you separately that a highly compliant organization which does not have pending notices, pending penalties, which is in good terms with the officers concerned for various compliances, will always be highly attractive for investors. Because in my limited practice of 10 years, whenever there were due diligences of startups, what we observed was that if you're not compliant, they're going to kill you when it comes to pricing of your startup. So your valuation will go down if you're not compliant. On the other hand, if you're highly compliant, you already have that financial discipline, you already have that proactive thought process when it comes to compliance, you're definitely going to be more attractive vis-a-vis a concern which is shoddy in their compliance management. So compliance management basically has got a lot of benefits if you ask me. The only thing is there needs to be awareness of that, and that awareness वो कैसे create होगा, that brings me to the next slide. So outsourcing, I think this is quite a well-known term when it comes to the IT sector, wherein outsourcing of non-core functions is something which was done, or rather which is still being done by a number of companies. So even in compliance, so sorry, even in compliance management, having an outsourced professional who does compliances day in and day out is going to be absolutely beneficial to you, because he or she knows what they are doing. So उनसे पूछिए, वो आपको बताएंगे क्या करना है, कैसे करना है, and they'll basically be able to preempt any problems which are there. Now you'll say कि sir ये costly affair है fairly. So believe me, if you already have an outsourced professional, then having an outsourced professional with a degree is still cheaper vis-a-vis hiring an employee with the same degree. Kyunki in startups, money saved is money earned, as I had said before. So any kind of money that you save on, what shall we say, uh, the idle time of your employees, you can pool in or push back that money into better, into डेवलपिंग मोर ऑफ योर कोर कॉम्पिटेंसी. सो समझिए आपके पास आपने एक सीए एम्प्लॉय रख दिया फॉर अ स्टार्टअप, उसका काम महीने में मे बी 8 या 10 वर्किंग डेज का रहता है, लेकिन आप उसको सैलरी पूरे महीने के देते हो. सो देयर having a professional is always better than hiring an employee. Secondly, you will get better technical competence for the same cost. So a person who has got say 15 or 20 years of experience in compliance management will still be cheaper than the same employee. And if you decide to save on cost for the employee, you'll sacrifice on the technical competence. Another benefit of going for outsourcing in compliance management is that you will get the right advice at the right time. So basically there is a English idiom which says a stitch in time saves nine. So if you already have an outsourced professional who is working with you, and so sorry, and you ask him certain questions ki this is the transaction that I plan to undertake, and tell me what is the best way I can do it, he'll still give you more options than the options which will be available to you on a post-mortem basis wherein you have already done the transaction. So ante-mortem versus post-mortem, I think ante-mortem is always better. Now, once your startup grows, then obviously outsourcing starts costing more, because the amount of time commitment that the professional needs to give goes up. So at that point of time, it is always better to shift from an outsourcing model to an in-house model. When exactly to shift that, I think it is better that the management discusses it with the professional, and then they go for the right amount of hiring. But outsourcing till a point is definitely beneficial, and after that you can simply shift to in-house marketing. So that about concludes my short PowerPoint presentation. Now I think uh, it is better to have a discussion about any questions that you might have, because let's make it more interactive. Yeah, just a minute.
Siley,
Yeah, yeah.
kindly coordinate questions.
Yes.
Thank you.
Students, please raise your hands and ask questions. Yes, Lokesh, please ask your question.
Hello. Hello, good morning.
Yes, hi,
So,
good morning.
sir, in startups, many startups go for third-party work. So, when it goes to third-party work, while generating invoice, there is two types of GST applied. One is from the second party, and the other one is from the third party, where the profit margin gets very little. So, are there any steps to reduce this, increase the profit by reducing some sort of or any different type of payment?
So let me just understand the question first. So you're saying कि there is a third party invoicing which happens. So say I have got a startup A. So आप कह रहे हैं कि startup A से आप startup B पे invoice raise करोगे और startup B से आप ultimate customer पे invoice raise करोगे. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you're asking कि how we can better uh,
So,
increase the
sir,
profit.
for example, if
Yes.
I'm a party A who wants to do some work, and I have given
Yes.
the tender to party B, and the
Okay.
party B has outsourced the tender to party C. So the
Okay.
party B will raise a invoice for me for my side for company A. For
Okay.
a particular 13% GST, and same goes with the party C. It will raise the invoice for party B for 13%, whereas the profit margin is going to be same for party B and C.
Okay. Okay. नो सो बेसिकली ये जब आप किसी भी थर्ड पार्टी पे इनवॉइस रेज करेंगे सो पार्टी ए हैज गिवन एन आउटसोर्स्ड वर्क टू पार्टी बी हैज सिमिलरली आउटसोर्स दैट टू पार्टी सी एंड ईच ऑफ देम हैव अप्लाइड 18% जीएसटी करेक्ट
Yes.
So basically under GST there is a seamless input credit unless what you are giving is certain types of restricted services. So GST का profit margin पे कोई भी impact नहीं आएगा. That is the whole point of GST. Now, what is the individual profit margin at the time of outsourcing? I think that is the management's call. But GST won't be an impact as long as you are not giving any kind of restricted service. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
Sir, there are some couple of questions from my side.
Yes, sir.
Let the student ask first. Somebody has raised. Lokesh, you ask the question. Lokesh, no.
Yes.
Darshan, please ask your
Darshan,
question.
Uh, Good, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
So I have one question. To start up a company, should we get an MSME certificate as well, or do we have to register for the MSME?
So basically, startup is a different registration. It's under a separate scheme of the government. MSME, it's a separate act. It's the Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Development Act of 2006. So startup के लिए आपको register अगर करना है तो there are other criteria. Whereas if you want to register under the MSME तो उसके लिए आपका जो बेसिकली एसेट बेस है एसेट बेस और आपका ग्रॉस टर्नओवर इसके बेसिस पे आपको एमएसएमई का रजिस्ट्रेशन मिलता है. सो दे आर टू डिफरेंट रजिस्ट्रेशन. सो इफ यू आर रजिस्टर्ड अंडर द एमएसएमई आप ये नहीं कह सकते कि मैं स्टार्टअप भी हूँ. So you can have a organization which is an MSME but which is not a startup. I'll give you an example. So if you go to somewhere like the MIDC Bhosri, वहाँ पे companies है which have been working for the past 30-40 years but which are basically small entities जिनका asset base उतना बड़ा नहीं है. So they are not startups but they are MSMEs. In a rare case, a startup can be an MSME and vice versa. But in the basic understanding, they are under two different acts.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
sir, one question is when the company is new and as these students are going to start a new startup, right?
Yes.
And what kind of challenges do you see immediately after starting it?
Okay.
Will it be costly to register or do all these compliances?
Okay. So, sir, I'll just you know, now that you're saying about cost, I'll just give you a basic understanding. So if you want to start a private limited company, then with all the basic registrations such as the PAN, TAN, GST, and now under the new form you can also open a bank account with certain listed banks in there. So अगर आपको नई company शुरू करनी है, तो that will cost you around 50-60,000 rupees to start it. And after that, if your volume is say 3 or 4 sales invoices during the month, 8 or 10 employees, तो आप ये सब compliance management at a monthly cost of around 10,000 rupees ये कर सकते हैं. So personally आप मुझे पूछेंगे तो it's not that costly, so long as you are aware of what all needs to be done on the day you start the company. The biggest problem that I have observed in my limited career of 10 years is that कंपनी इनकॉर्पोरेट होते वक्त जितना एंथुजियाज्म रहता है उतना उसका कंप्लायंस में बिल्कुल नहीं रहता. एंड दैट इज वेयर थिंग्स स्टार्ट गोइंग डाउनहिल because you don't pay attention to that compliance. So personally I feel that if you are registering a startup, आपका annual cost 1 लाख रुपए से ऊपर नहीं जाएगा. And I am sure that depending on the volume it can go lower also. What I'm telling you is just something standard. And of course the only thing is that if you don't want to have this costlier compliance on the first day, then it is better that you start up with a more basic type of entity and get yourself converted once your business model has scaled to a certain limit.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Siley, those who are finance students can ask questions related to anything related to finance and the company related things like.
Yes, sir. Students, please raise your hands and ask the question.
Yes, Tina.
Yes, Tina.
Sir, as you mentioned, dispute redressal is one of the key aspects in like forming a company or selecting what kind of an entity we want to form.
Yes.
So I believe having a private limited company or a company would like be of more, it would be easier to redress a dispute in that
Yes.
entity, in that form of an entity. But do you think that the legal system, the justice system is more compliant or more uh, helpful in relating to other such entities as well, like proprietorship or partnership or limited liability partnership?
Okay, so I'll answer your question in two parts. So first you ask me about the private limited entity. Now personally, if you ask me, a private limited company is always better for the first and foremost reason that your liability is limited. Okay, so typically what happens with startups is that it's a trial and error if you ask me. So protecting the financial position of the promoters, of the entrepreneurs is really important whenever the entrepreneur wants to start, have his own startup. So from that particular perspective, a private limited entity is always better. Uh, the compliances for a private limited company are definitely more as compared to that of a partnership or a limited liability partnership or a proprietary. But as I said, the flip side of that, the pros of that is that you're protected in case of any issue later on. The second question that you asked was about dispute redressal. So Abhi, what basically I have observed is that it is easier for the promoters of a private limited or a public limited company to resolve their disputes because of two reasons. The first reason being an exit is easier. So typically what happens is that say both two people started as promoters of the company, and say 5 years down the line now they don't get along well, and one of them wishes to exit. They need to make a clean cut. It's very easy to say ki he can purchase my shares at the fair value. Once his shares are purchased, I'll resign as director and the private limited ownership gets transferred. So this exit has got a lot of flexibility as compared to that a partnership, retiring of a partner, admission of a partner is fairly difficult because in partnerships you are also sharing the ownership of assets. So typically exiting from a partnership is fairly difficult. That is one. Secondly, for dispute redressal, you have got better forums available under the Companies Act, such as the National Company Law Tribunal, which have got a fast track record of faster, giving decisions more quickly as compared to a normal civil court, wherein to quote the Sunny Deol, तारीख पे तारीख मिलती है. So it is always better to have your dispute redressal for a dedicated quasi-judicial forum from a dedicated quasi-judicial forum as against a normal civil court where other matters are also listed और आपका number कब आएगा मालूम नहीं. So for dispute redressal also, I personally think a private limited company is easier, but closure of a private limited company, of course, is much more difficult as compared to a proprietary partnership or a limited liability. If you want to simply shut down, uh, it's a procedure of 2 or 3 years, whereas a partnership firm or limited liability partnership में आपका ये काम 6 महीने में हो जाएगा. प्रोप्राइटरी तो कल से मैं काम नहीं करता है, ऐसे आप बताओगे तो प्रोप्राइटरशिप क्लोज हो जाती है. So personally, if you ask me, closure is easier for the first three types of entities. For a private limited company, it is more difficult, but dispute resolution and transfer of ownership is easier for a private limited company.
Right, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sir, also in the case of an LLP, I
Yes.
mean, it is fairly new as
Yes.
compared to the other kinds of entities. But
Yes.
like with a limited liability, it also exhibits like some factors of a private limited company. So
Yes.
in case of a private limited company, we have like an MOA, a proper set of articles in place. In case of any, like, they also attribute to the dispute redressal. Is there any such provision in case of an LLP? Uh,
So LLP Act is, as you rightly said, it's a fairly young act. It has come in 2008. I'll just tell you a brief background of why the LLP Act came into what was the basic purpose of the Limited Liability Partnership Act coming into existence. So limited liability partnership is a very good form of organization where you have got uh, a specific project which you need to undertake, and after that आपको वो लिमिटेड लाइबिलिटी, वो प्रोजेक्ट खत्म होने के बाद वो लिमिटेड लाइबिलिटी पार्टनरशिप से आप प्रॉफिट निकाल लोगे और बंद कर दोगे. सो दिस इज वन ऑफ द मेन रीजंस व्हाई एन एलएलपी वाज फॉर्म्ड, बिकॉज कंपनी से अगर आप प्रॉफिट निकालने जाओगे तो वो डबल टैक्सेशन होता है. एक बार कंपनी भी टैक्स भरती है और डिविडेंड पे दोबारा टैक्स बैठता है, तो वो न हो इसलिए उन्होंने एलएलपी लाई. एंड द सेकंड रीजन वाज दे वांटेड टू गिव द बेनिफिट ऑफ लिमिटेड लायबिलिटी to a normal partnership. Now, if you go for a private limited company, as you said, there is a memorandum of association and there is an articles of association. These basically are documents which deal with how the company deals with third parties and how the company conducts business of its own. For an LLP, there is nothing specified in the act such as memorandum and articles of association. The LLP Act is basically governed by the deed of partnership that the LLP is based on which it is formed. Because of that, you have a fair bit of flexibility in defining of the functions and the ownership structure, everything. You have a lot of flexibility. because there is no standard set of documents which you need to comply with. In the LLP Act, you can have the flexibility of a normal partnership कि ये काम ये करेगा, इसको इतना profit मिलेगा, इतना capital ownership मिलेगा. तो there is complete what shall we say freedom for you to decide how the LLP conducts business because of its LLP deed.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Just to add, in the LLP deed, you can put in provisions relating to arbitration in case of disputes between partners, just like any other agreement that you have. But any LLP related disputes are still governed by the civil courts and not by a specific tribunal in this regard.
Right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, I would like to ask one question which I came across recently because I am a mechanical engineer basically. But
Yes,
I
sir.
came across this Section 8 company recently.
Yes, sir.
And I could see it happening frequently everywhere. Like,
Yes, sir.
yeah, IMDR is now Section 8 company, and there is a Ferguson College Association also is there.
Yes, sir.
So what
Yes,
is
sir.
the purpose of having Section 8 and what is the specificity with this particular clause?
Okay. So basically, all companies, it is assumed that you are starting it with the motive of earning a profit. So those companies which are not started with the motive of earning a profit, or in other words, they are not for profit organization, they are governed by Section 8 of the Companies Act. So typically those companies are called Section 8 companies. Now, to give a brief background on this particular point, if you want to start the charitable organization, you have got a number of clauses which you can, there are a number of acts under which you can register. So you can either form a public trust, or you can have an association of persons which is just governed by the deed between those persons, or you can have a Section 8 company. So Section 8 company basically comes with the benefit of being a private limited company. And why you have seen so many Section 8 companies come up in the past 2 years is because there has been an amendment in the Companies Act wherein corporate social responsibility expenses now have to be paid, and there are penal provisions that have come in. So now everyone wants to have their own charitable organization through which they can undertake their corporate social responsibility activities. Now, to have that CSR activity and have to be registered, what shall we say, to be eligible under that particular thing, the company needs to be registered under two sections of the Income Tax Act. One is your 12A registration. So that registration basically entails that any kind of income that the company earns will be exempted from tax. And the second registration that one needs to obtain is the 80G, which says that any kind of donations which is paid, any kind of donations which are paid by the donors will get a tax deduction. So that is the reason why there are so many Section 8 companies. Basically, a Section 8 company is a not-for-profit organization.
Okay, sir. Means all these education trusts and all,
Yes, sir.
do they come under Section 8 company or
No, sir,
the
no.
Societies
So,
Act is different?
sir, basically they are public trusts registered under the
Public
Bombay
trust.
Public Trust Act.
Okay.
So basically Section 8 companies in the erstwhile Companies Act of 1956, they were called as Section 25 companies. So Section 8 companies, Section 25 companies have come more into vogue today, because basically it is the corporate groups which want to form their own organizations through which they can
Entity
do CSR
separate.
activities.
For
So public trust ka to, I mean, it's a very difficult compliance of going to the charity commissioner and yes, so it fairly difficult. So uske as against that, a Section 8 company is easier to govern and run.
Okay.
Ji.
So it is easy to do
Yes,
compliance
sir.
there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And these people, when they will start, suppose there are only two partners, they can they go only for proprietorship and will they be eligible for getting loans and all, or they have to form a joint venture, that joint stock company or something like that?
Okay. So basically, sir, if there is more than one businessman, then that person cannot form a proprietary, because they would like to distribute their functions between the them. So the basic kind of entity that one can form if there are two businessmen who are coming together is a partnership firm. uh, Getting funds and getting debt syndication is always better if you have a limited company, a private or public limited company, because partnership firms का कैसा रहता है कि आपका सब मतलब it's all on the unlimited liability basis. So even for a partner, if there is some default on the loan, bank can come home and take his personal assets. So debt syndication, even banks are happier to do with private limited companies as against partnership firms. But of course, depending on the track record and the financial statements, partnership firm को भी debt syndication कर सकते हैं, but banks still prefer working with a limited liability company.
Yes, Tina, please ask
Thank
your
you, sir.
question.
Thank you.
Tina can go
Uh,
ahead.
Yes, sir. So what are like in case of a proprietorship, what are the benefits if a person wants to start an HUF instead of a proprietorship firm?
Okay.
What would be the income tax benefits and all of that?
Okay, so let me give you the background of HUF. So HUF is basically governed by the Hindu Succession Act. So you cannot, per se form an HUF. So basically, if there is a Hindu undivided family, then any income which is earned by that Hindu undivided family is chargeable to tax as an HUF under income tax. तो अगर आप देखेंगी तो Hindu undivided family करके there is no what shall we say, there is no type of entity which is there in any law. हिंदू सक्सेशन एक्ट में सिर्फ हिंदू अनडिवाइडेड फैमिली मतलब क्या ये दिया है. और बेसिकली हिंदू अनडिवाइडेड फैमिली का टैक्सेशन कैसा रहता है कि एनी एंसेस्ट्रल प्रॉपर्टी विच यू हैव गॉटन फ्रॉम योर फोरफादर्स, उससे जो इनकम मिलेगा उस पे आपको टैक्स HUF के अंडर भरना है. सो यू कैनॉट स्टार्ट एन HUF इन द फॉर्म की क्या कल से मैंने HUF शुरू की. अगर आपके पास फॉर एग्जाम्पल father, mother, and son, that is one unit of a Hindu undivided family. And if they have got ancestral properties in the form of buildings, तो उस पे जो रेंट मिलेगा दैट इज चार्जेबल टू टैक्स अंडर HUF. लेकिन तीनों ने मिलके एक नया बिजनेस शुरू किया, नई बिल्डिंग खरीदी और उसका रेंट लेना शुरू कर दिया. So this is not HUF because there is no component of ancestral family which is coming in, ancestral family wealth. So self-generated or self-earned income cannot be made part of the HUF.
Okay, sir. But I mean, so I studied for IPC as well, and like our teacher, they advised us to turn our family business into an HUF uh, because of the tax benefits that an HUF gets, like at par with an individual. So
Correct.
what
So
I
if you are
mean,
an
I
HUF,
wanted to
then you
understand
will
the
get the same
implication of
tax
that.
benefits as a proprietary concern. Sorry.
Right. I just wanted to understand the implication of that decision. Like, why would somebody advise uh, to convert a proprietary business into an HUF?
So basically, under the old act, HUF still had benefits because you used to get the basic exemption limit and everything. Now under the recent provisions, तो उतना कुछ आपको उतना tax savings होता नहीं है, if you ask me. And basically registering your मतलब HUF करके आपका पैन निकालने के बाद you still need to prove that this income is coming from your ancestral business. So अगर आपके फादर ने वो बिजनेस शुरू किया है तो टेक्निकली उनके HUF के लिए दैट इज नॉट एंसेस्ट्रल. मे बी व्हेन you or your brother will take over that business, then that can be said to be ancestral.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dheeraj, please ask your question.
2 minutes.
Yes, yes.
Sir, so you had mentioned about availability of sound advice. So how to approach or find someone or a mentor, because at this stage we don't know how many people who will help us.
Okay, so if you ask me, you'll get good advice from. So basically, अगर आप खुद की startup शुरू करने वाले हो, तो you basically need two people who will do hand holding for you for compliance management. If you're starting a private limited company or an LLP, you'll need a company secretary. And if you're मतलब आपके finance, taxes ये angle के लिए आपको एक CA कोई तो person लगेगा who can help with compliance management. The easiest way to do it is approach your family chartered accountant. Just like family doctor रहते हैं वैसे family CA भी रहते हैं. So अगर आप उनसे अप्रोच करेंगे, उनसे एडवांस में डिस्कशन करेंगे, then you can have better inputs on how you want to proceed. So my personal advice to you is, if at all you want to start your own entity, you want to have your own startup, it is always better to approach a professional in the form of a CS or a CA. CS for your legal compliances and entity incorporation or annual compliances. और आपके taxes bookkeeping के लिए you should approach a CA. The easiest way is to approach the same CA who has been working with your family for their income tax returns and everything. I think that is a good place to start.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you.
Arnav, please ask your question.
Hello, sir. My question was along the same lines actually. So, if I'm either going to start a new business and
Yes.
I have a partner with me, so two of us are going to start, then which would probably be the easiest mode to take? Because some of them could be costly as well, right? Or is that not so? Even
No,
from a financial accounting point of view, because for starting a new thing, you want to avoid all as much of an hassle as you can, I feel.
I think if you don't mind me being frank,
Yes, sir.
that is the wrong place to start. Why? I'll tell you. Starting with an entity with the least amount of compliances, instead of starting at that point of time, I think you should start with the type of entity which caters to your requirement the most. So if you have got a partner, who's जो आपका बहुत पुराना दोस्त है, वो सालों साल की दोस्ती है, फैमिली फ्रेंड्स है, तो यू कैन स्टार्ट विद अ पार्टनरशिप फर्म ऑल्सो. आपको पैसा निकालना है, उसमें आपको कोई फ्यूचर इन्वेस्टमेंट फोरकास्ट आप नहीं कर रहे हो, नॉर्मल बिजनेस शुरू कर रहे हैं, so a normal partnership firm can also work. If you're not that confident about the person, you can start with an LLP. or if you want to have investment in future, से 2 या 3 साल के बाद आपके पास एक scalable business idea है, you excuse me, you want to take investments into that startup of yours, then it is always better to have a private limited company. So personally I think आप compliance से डरिए मत, because compliance कैसा है वो चलता रहता है. The thing is, selection of an entity is more dependent on the kind of future forecast that you have for that entity. कि अब समझे, अगर आपको you want to start with a business in India and you want to have a subsidiary in the US 5 years down the line, it is always better to start with a private limited company today. As against that, if you want to get into say a real estate transaction, कि आपके पास ये है, जमीन है, वो आप डेवलप करेंगे, वो आप सेल करेंगे, और वो जमीन डेवलप होके सेल हो जाएगी, तो उसका प्रॉफिट निकाल के आप वो एंटिटी बंद कर देंगे. सो देन इट इज ऑलवेज बेटर टू हैव अ पार्टनरशिप और अ लिमिटेड लायबिलिटी पार्टनरशिप. So personally, if you ask me, how do you look at the future of the entity is more important than what kind of compliances are there. Compliances तो होंगे ही, but it's more on the side of what you want from the entity.
Understood, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, one more thing which I would like to ask, that is, uh, as you told us that 10,000 rupees are required minimum.
Yes.
Right? So, for the startup, those who are going to start,
Yes.
in the beginning, is there any provision wherein there is a tax benefit or something like that, exemption?
Yes. Yes, sir. So basically, sir, under the Income Tax Act, if you get registered as a startup, so the registration happens in two steps. First, that startup entity needs to be registered with the DIPP. which is the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion. And once you get the DIPP registration, then you will have to get yourself a startup registration under the Income Tax Act. Once you get the registration under Income Tax Act, then you have a tax holiday for 4 years out of 7. Then you have a lower rate of tax depending on all the activities are happening. So under income tax, there are definitely benefits which are there. The only thing is that income tax restricts startup benefits to the time that you are actually a startup. For example, if at any time during the 7 years your turnover crosses 100 crores, then आपका startup का status वो revoke कर देंगे, because then you no longer are a startup. So वो सब conditions income tax act में laid down है. तो depending on how you want to approach that, you can get yourself registered with DIPP and income tax. On a personal note, again, this is something which I would urge any budding entrepreneur to first understand as to whether this is a useful, what shall we say, useful benefit available. Why, I'll tell you. How many startups run into profits in the first 4 years? तो आप वो पूरा DIPP रजिस्ट्रेशन करेंगे, उस पर पैसा खर्च करेंगे, इनकम टैक्स रजिस्ट्रेशन लेंगे, सॉरी, उस पर आप पैसा खर्च करेंगे, और आपके पहले 7 सालों में आपको ज्यादा कुछ प्रॉफिट ही नहीं हुआ, तो फिर ये सब खर्चा, जो द अल्टीमेट एम ऑफ दिस एक्सपेंडिचर इज दैट यू शुड गेट अ टैक्स हॉलिडे. इफ यू डोंट earn profits, वो टैक्स हॉलिडे का कुछ यूज ही नहीं रहता, एंड यू हैव जस्ट कमिटेड टू कॉस्ट. सो पर्सनली आई थिंक दिस इज अ कस्टम मेड डिसीजन. We have got one company which is into R&D. So they basically take government grants and do R&D. So at first they wanted to register as a startup, but when we examined their future plans, गवर्नमेंट ग्रांट तो वो अगले 5 साल तक तो वो गवर्नमेंट ग्रांट पे ही फंक्शन करने वाले थे. देन वी एडवाइज देम कि आप स्टार्टअप रजिस्ट्रेशन मत लो, क्योंकि उसका कंप्लायंस बढ़ जाएगा, कॉस्ट बढ़ जाएगी, और सब्सटेंशियल बेनिफिट नहीं मिलेगा. एज अगेंस्ट दैट, इफ देयर इज एन एंटिटी की जहाँ पे वो कॉस्ट बेनिफिट और टैक्स बेनिफिट जो है उसका हमको वो सब्सटेंशियल यूटिलिटी दिखता है, देन वी एडवाइज कि आप ले लो रजिस्ट्रेशन.
Sir,
Yes.
there is a disconnection, I think.
Am I audible now, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sorry, कहाँ से डिस्कनेक्ट हुआ?
1 minute before, like something.
अच्छा, नो, व्हाट आई वाज सेइंग सर इज दैट कि ये जो स्टार्टअप का इनकम टैक्स और DIPP का रजिस्ट्रेशन है, उसका अगर सब्सटेंशियल बेनिफिट एंटिटी को मिल रहा है, देन वी एडवाइज टू स्पेंड दैट मनी एंड गेट दैट रजिस्ट्रेशन. अगर फ्यूचर बिजनेस प्लान देख के ऐसा लगा कि नहीं उससे कुछ ज्यादा बेनिफिट नहीं मिलता है, देन वी एडवाइज नॉट टू गेट दैट रजिस्ट्रेशन.
Okay. So they have to think properly and how
Yes.
far that means that further for at your progression you have to check whether it will
Yes,
go in
yes,
which
yes.
direction, because if it becomes bigger then there is no issue,
Yes.
because compliances have to be done and they will remove the startup this particular
Yes.
your definition, it is out of the startup then.
Yes, sir.
One more thing, like something which is away from compliances, I would like to ask. These
Okay.
are budding entrepreneurs, budding managers,
Yes,
and
sir.
most of them, sir, most of them come with the intention of getting a job.
Yes,
And
sir.
you are also a very young person, and you
Yes.
joined immediately. You started your consulting firm.
Yes, sir.
When I could see that many chartered accountants are joining companies and they are securing themselves,
Yes,
but
sir.
you enter into entrepreneurship, right?
Yes.
What
Yes.
exactly led you to this particular decision that you will do practice instead of having a job?
Okay.
And how these people should go about? Because some of them may not have family businesses.
Yes, sir.
Some of them may be skeptical after having some idea also.
Yes, sir.
Because there I could see many are there nowadays would like to start their own, but they are quite skeptical about it.
Yes, sir.
And one more thing I would like to add, that now they are completing this post graduation.
Yes,
Will
sir.
this qualification help them in getting a loan or something like that, better loan
Yes,
to
sir.
make a business better, at
Yes.
investment better?
Yes, sir.
So can you focus on this?
Yes, sir. So, sir, basically the first question that you asked as to what prompted me to start my own practice. So I'll just give you a very short background. So when I started my practice, actually the reason why I started my practice was that I didn't want to do the same job year after year. So I wanted to get into something new, get into something more innovative. So that is why I started my own practice. Starting with your, starting off as an entrepreneur, the biggest hurdle which I particularly see and which even I went through is the fact that you really don't get the kind of money that you would get if you started your, if you got into a job. So I had my friends who started, who joined a big four or something, और उनका salary था 60,000 rupees a month and I used to barely get 5,000 rupees a month. So I think that the first step to start your own entrepreneurial entity or entrepreneurial venture is the fact that you need to believe in the idea and the scalability of the idea instead of focusing on a monthly paycheck. So that of course this is my personal opinion. So this is something that is really important. As postgraduates, I think we as a community, as a nation, we are more focused on getting a good job than we are on having our own entrepreneurial uh, ventures. So maybe that is because we don't have that kind of a capitalist mindset. But I personally feel that each and every person, if they start, if they have an idea and they can they have a good path and good consultants and good mentors, they can definitely turn their ideas into a scalable business model, which will not only provide self-employment, but which will also provide uh, personally, I think that will also provide a good amount of money, say 3 4 5 years down the line. We just need to be patient for those 3 4 5 years, and I'm sure we'll earn a good amount going forward. The second question that you asked is that these people, as postgraduates, definitely, if they have a good idea, I personally feel that the government has come out with good bank loan schemes, which promotes entrepreneurship on a big scale. The only thing is that they need to be guided to the right destination, because unfortunately or fortunately, the thing is कि people are more concerned कि चलो बैंक से लोन लेते हैं और फिर ये करेंगे वो करेंगे. I personally feel that each and every rupee that one takes for the business should be applied for the business. And if that financial discipline is instilled from the first day, then I don't see any reason why these entrepreneurial ventures won't thrive. So not just survive, but they will thrive, if you ask me.
Very good, sir. Because that is what I felt, because I could see many people take loans
Yes, sir.
and they utilize that money for personal gains
Yes, sir.
instead of investing in that particular business for which application is made.
Yes, sir.
And then we see there is bank corruption. The latest example that has happened, that is of Raisoni, that society was there, some
Yes.
financial society was there. It was not a bank, and
Yes.
it went into bank corruption something, and there is a case going on.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
So the value of ethics in the business, that how will you just focus on that? Like what kind of etiquettes and the discipline? Discipline you already mentioned, but the value of ethics in running an enterprise.
Yes, sir. Sir, I personally think the way when I started my practice, I had an order of priority of payment. So the first payment that must go is to the government. So all government dues should be zero. The next payment must go to the employees. The next payment must go to the suppliers. And the last, अगर ये सब करके पैसा बचा तो then it can go to the entrepreneur. So I think if this order of priority is followed, then I don't see any reason why any mismanagement of funds will happen. First money must go to the government, because आप इंडिया में रहते हो तो you must be compliant. Second, you must pay your employees, because if the employees are happy, your organization will run. Third, you must pay all your suppliers. कि नहीं नहीं वो लोग भी अपना टाइम देते हैं तो उनका भी सब पेमेंट हो जाना चाहिए टाइम पे। ये सब होने के बाद बचा तो आपके पर्सनल आपको रेम्यूनरेशन मिलेगा, आप पर्सनल खर्चे कर सकते हो। ये 3 में पैसा खत्म हो गया तो यू आर नॉट सपोज टू ड्रॉ एनीथिंग। आई थिंक पर्सनली इट्स एग्जैक्टली द अदर वे अराउंड कि गवर्नमेंट नीचे चला आता है और पर्सनल पहला चला जाता है। इन मोस्ट ऑफ द फेल्ड स्टार्टअप्स दैट वी सी, आई थिंक कि दैट इज वन ऑफ द मेन प्रॉब्लम्स। एंड इफ यू हैव गॉट एनी बैंक लोन्स तो गवर्नमेंट के बाद बैंक भी आ जाता है फॉर रीपेमेंट, because the bank can screw your happiness like anything. Once they report in your CIBIL and everything, they can, you know, it becomes so much more difficult to get a loan ki it is better not to indulge in any such activities. So I think ethicality there is really important.
Yes, sir. Because I work with Garware Polyester, Mr. Shashikant Garware was the CEO, means in those days MD. Now his daughters have taken over, and I could hear from the office that not a single person from government should come here,
Yes sir.
and all the compliances should be met first.
Yes sir.
And so then only you can prosper, because
Yes.
this is from Garware's second generation.
Yes sir.
Because Shashikant Garware is son of Abasab Garware.
Yes sir.
So that if we run in that way, because they are doing well still, all their other entities, like one of them has failed, but that
Yes.
might be some other reason.
Yes.
But mostly if you follow the ethics and follow the procedure, I don't
Yes.
see any problem in doing
Yes.
working as entrepreneur.
Yes sir.
Thank you, sir, for your
Thank you.
time and valuable inputs. Over to you, Tina, for vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir. It's my immense pleasure to present this vote of thanks, sir. I am Tina Samtani, and on behalf of the Deccan Education Society, IMDR, I'd like to formally propose this vote of thanks to you for giving us your invaluable input and inspiring us on an overview of applicable compliances and their management for startup entities. You, sir, in your talk, you mentioned so many things, you answered so many questions meticulously, and also taught us to ask the right questions in case of selecting the kind of entity that we that we want to incorporate. You mentioned various kinds of compliances that one needs to follow, such as the GST, the customs, income tax, and labor laws compliances. You also mentioned in your talk that outsourcing of compliances in the former scheme of a startup could be more reliable, and it could be more helpful as compared to gradually shifting towards an in-house incorporation of it. Sir, lastly, you mentioned that the priority scheme of payment should be firstly the governments, then the bank loans, if any, employees, suppliers, and finally the entrepreneur. Sir, I I believe that whatever we have discussed today in this session is going to be really helpful for all of us in our future endeavors. Thank you so much, sir. And I would also like to thank our director, the faculty, non teaching staff for their continuous support and encouragement with such corporate connect. I thank the entire student organizing team, the technical support, and last but not the least, all my fellow student colleagues.
Thank you so much. It was a great session that we had, and I really appreciate you giving me an
Thank you so
opportunity.
much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Huh?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Meet you.
Yes. Thank you. Where to, sir? Thank you.
Okay, goodbye.
We are sharing feedback forms. Sir.
Wait for a minute. Feedback form is being shared by Shruti ma'am. Please fill up the feedback form. for both these lectures? It is mandatory.